Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be able to welcome our virtual audience to the Interdisciplinary Humanities Center's Humanities Decanted series. This is our first decanting of the year, and we are very much looking forward to hosting faculty throughout the academic year to share their newest interdisciplinary scholarly and creative work with the campus and the public. And while we are virtual today, we are cautiously optimistic that at some point soon, we will return to the physical space of the IHC to host all of you in person. Our conversation today will last for about 30 minutes, after which we will take audience questions for 10 minutes. At any time during the event, you can use the Q&A feature on your screen to submit your questions. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of the land upon which the Interdisciplinary Humanities Center is located. And I would like to pay respect to elders, both past and present. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's interlocutors, Professors Irwin Appel and James Kearney. Hello, gentlemen. Irwin Appel is Professor of Theater and Chair of the Department of Theater and Dance at UCSB. He is also a professional director, equity actor, and composer sound designer who has worked with a multitude of theater companies and ensembles in the United States and internationally. Professor Appel will be in conversation with Professor James Kearney of the English department, whose teaching and research interests include early modern literature and culture, Shakespeare, and literary theory. They both will be speaking about Professor Appel's theater company, Naked Shakes, and the recent production of Twelfth Night, staged outside at UCSB's Commencement Green in front of the lagoon. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome both Jim and Irwin.
Thank you very much, Susan and Aaron and Paula and all of the IHC. We are thrilled to be here. We really appreciate this very much. Before we talk about Twelfth Night, I want to talk for a few minutes about this theater company, this provocative title, Naked Shakes, and show you a video clip from one of our productions, which I will explain in a moment. This provocative title, Naked Shakes, basically stands for the actor and the word, and it comes from the principle that you can take an actor in a bare space, a great text, and the imagination of the audience, and those things together make magic, make something special happen. And the point of the sparseness and the bareness is the notion of the theatricality that can be generated from the actors so that you have a combination of a play that you can close your eyes and listen to as you would a podcast or a radio broadcast. And at the same time, you can open your eyes and see this wild actor-generated theatricality in space, similar to if you were attending a dance performance. In fact, when I first came to UCSB a lot of years ago, I was greatly influenced by dance in our department and by the dance concerts that I saw in our theater, the Hatland Theater. So I want to show you a video first. It is from my adaptation of Shakespeare's history plays called The Death of Kings, which we performed at UCSB. And this particular section is a moment from technically Henry VI, Part 1, but The Death of Kings kind of combines the plays, blends them, which I won't go too into now unless the conversation takes us that way. At this point in the play, Shakespeare has written a stage direction that Joan La Pucelle, also known as Joan of Arc, is taken off stage to be tried, and then we know that Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. Well, I decided when we set out to do this production, let's skip the trial and let's go right to the burning of the stake, at the stake. And how could we do that theatrically? So with the brilliance of my colleague, Christina McCarthy, choreographer, and composer-musician Jim Connolly, we came up with the following clip that we want to show you. At the same time, the character of Margaret of Anjou, who many know as Queen Margaret, many only know Queen Margaret really in Richard III when she has been banished and she comes back to haunt Richard and to curse everyone there. But Margaret of Anjou has a really interesting arc throughout the history plays of Shakespeare that most people don't ever get to see. So one of the motivations for The Death of Kings was so that we could show the entire arc of Margaret. And I wrote a stage direction in my earliest draft of The Death of Kings that said, it should be as if when Joan's life ends, Margaret's begins. And so I'd like to show you how we did that and then have a few comments on that as well. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, and hopefully you will be able to see this. Enjoy.
My ancient incantations are too weak, and hell too strong for me to buckle with. Now, France, thy glory droopeth to the dust.
Damsel of France, I think I have you fast. Unchain your spirits now with spelling charms, and try if they can gain your liberty. Bring forth that sorceress, condemned to burn.
I prithee, give me leave to curse a while.
Curse, miscreant, when thou comest to the stake.
First, let me tell you whom ye have condemned. Not me, begotten of a shepherd swain, but issued from the progeny of kings, virtuous and holy, chosen from above by inspiration of celestial grace to work exceeding miracles on earth. I never had to do with wicked spirits, but you, who are polluted with your lust, stained with the guiltless blood of innocence, corrupt and tainted with 1,000 vices, because you want the grace that others have. You judge it straight a thing impossible to come as wonders but by help of devils. No misconceiving! Joan of Arc had been a virgin from her tender infancy. Whose maiden blood, thus rigorously abused, will cry for vengeance at the gates of heaven.
Aye. To execution.
Will nothing turn your unrelenting hearts? Then burn me hence, with whom I leave my curse. May never glorious sun reflect his beams upon the country where you make abode, but darkness and the gloomy shade of death environ you. Till mischief and despair drive you to break your necks. Or hang yourself.
Be what thou wilt! Thou art my prisoner!
O fairest beauty, do not fear nor fly, for I will touch thee but with reverent hands. I kiss these fingers for eternal peace, and lay them gently on thy tender side. Who art thou? Say, that I may honor thee.
Margaret, my name, and daughter to a king, the King of Naples, whosoever thou art.
A duke I am, and Suffolk am I called. But be not offended, nature's miracle. Thou art allotted to be ta'en by me. Yet, if this servile usage once offend, go, and be free again, as Suffolk's friend. Oh, stay!
Thank you for taking the time to watch that. And there's a couple of quick comments I wanted to make before we get into the interview portion of this, which is that the reason that this clip for me epitomizes what Naked Shakes is all about is because of a few moments. First of all, there is that moment when of the lighting of the match, for wanting of a better way to put it. And that was, by the way, our brilliant actor, Brian Harwell, who I know that many of you may know, who works on campus. And Brian came up with that idea in rehearsal using that stick. And those sticks, by the way, they are called quarterstaffs. And we use those sticks for everything. Props, weapons, scenic elements. So part of Naked Shakes is the transformation of a single prop, a single item on stage. So in this particular case, that moment of the lighting of the match, to me, there's no flame, there's no eerie red light, there's no smoke, nothing like that. But hopefully as you watched, you felt the realness of that fire. And as he brought that stick down to light those other sticks, again, no fire, no realism in this, all abstraction, but hopefully in some ways you felt, your imagination felt the burning of the flames. And the other quick point I'll make about this is that the moment after the burning is done and the actors all raise the sticks and Margaret is revealed as if she were born, it takes away the linear or literal quality of exits, entrances, transitions. Notice no scene changes, anything like that. Just basically created by the actors as they would in a dance. There's many other things I could say, but I would really like to welcome my dear friend and colleague, James Kearney, Jim, to continue this conversation in whatever way that you would like to go.
Thanks so much, Irwin, for that introduction to Naked Shakes. And thank you to Susan and to Irwin for the opportunity to discuss first Irwin's creative vision in adapting Shakespeare, and then Naked Shakes as an idea, right, as an initiative, and really as one of the jewels of our campus. I should say at the outset, Irwin and Naked Shakes put on a Shakespeare play every year on our campus. If anyone in our audience has not yet been to one of these productions, please do yourself a favor and get out to see one of these shows. So I just want to, that clip from The Death of Kings brought back so many memories. What a fantastic show. What a fantastic moment. And two things immediately jumped out to me from that clip that speak to what Naked Shakes is and does, right? You talked about sort of the minimalism of Naked Shakes and the focus on language and the actor. Here, what really struck me, well, two things: movement and sound. And you talked about the fact at the very beginning that you were, inspired by, influenced by dance. So I wonder if you could speak for a few minutes about Naked Shakes in relation to choreography, movement. The performances I've seen have been so wonderfully kinetic. You really feel bodies moving in space, and then maybe segue to sound, which seems like another huge feature of these productions, where when you have this minimalism, both movement and sound really, pop. So I wonder if you could say a few things about that in relation to Naked Shakes.
Thank you so much for that question, Jim. And I would love to. First of all, I am blessed in the Department of Theater and Dance to work with brilliant colleagues such as Christina McCarthy, Daniel Stein, who have contributed movement to these productions. And what I always like to work with a designer or a choreography is somebody who comes up with things that I could never think of. Maybe I have the initial impulse of an idea, but somebody who understands how the body works in space, understands negative space, understands physical relationships in an abstract way on stage, and thinks maybe differently than I might be thinking in terms of language and image. That's a little bit cut and dry, but I'm always very, very excited about that, like a musician playing with another musician who doesn't play the same instrument you play or something like that. So again, the brilliance of my colleagues helped to make these Naked Shakes productions come alive. The other thing about sound and music is that I am also a composer and sound designer, and that really comes from the fact that basically I was like a rock and roll guitar player in high school, and I just love music my whole life. I love, music is everything. I think if you want to see God, look to music. And that, to me, if even though I am such a fan of all design elements in theater, scenery, lighting, etc., costumes, etc., if I could only have one element in my productions, it would be sound and music. Sound and music are the bed under which the story is told. They are the magic of the transitions. It can be very abstract music, or what I tend to use a lot in Naked Shakes productions are popular music, songs that sometimes people know, sometimes they're just songs that I love, because I've always loved the juxtaposition between the Shakespearean language and imagery with our modern poetic imagery. And so much of our modern poetic language is in music. So for me too, that the idea of my attraction, as I said, to dance concerts in our theater here was just long crosses in space, using every inch of the theater for what it's worth, for the ability for the performer to be isolated in almost a void, not exactly a void, because there's still much light. We tend to use a device called a cyc, which is short for cyclorama. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's basically a big white screen that you can shine light on, and it changes color, and that is often a backdrop for the production. I love that aesthetic. And the idea of people moving through space, creating, mixing this very precise, lush imagery of Shakespeare in particular with what the body can do in space.
Fantastic. I had no idea about your history as a rock and roll guitarist. We have to talk more about that at some point. So I want to talk to you for a minute about art and artistry. You're a director, actor, composer, sound designer, and someone who adapts these plays. This is one of the long-term projects you've taken on, is the adaptation of Shakespeare. Can you talk to us for a minute about the art of adaptation? I don't think this is something we talk about enough. Yes. The artistry involved in adapting one thing, especially something that was written 400 years ago.
Well, yes, and is it a bad answer to basically say, I just think adaptation is really fun? I love getting in there and cutting and pasting and messing around. But beside the point on that for a second, one of the things that I'm very grateful for at UCSB is that UCSB has provided an artistic home where, for me, every time I finish a production, it isn't like, okay, just that play is done, what's the next one going to be? It's almost like each production opens a door aesthetically to an idea that I'm still chasing or still pursuing. And so Naked Shakes has been going for 16 years. And what that means is that it didn't start out intending that it was going to be about adaptation per se. It started out from the notion that I still believe, I've believed it all my life, that the best way to study a play is to do it. That's simple. And so I've done that my whole life, and I believe that true for students, and I believe that for community. The best way to study a play is to do it. In the doing of it, what started to develop was, especially my second Naked Shakes production was The Tempest. And in Shakespeare's Tempest, there's a big scene of a banquet, a kind of a feast. It's a gift. The goddesses come to visit, from Prospero is giving to his daughter Miranda and new son-in-law Ferdinand. But I didn't want to do Shakespeare's version, quite honestly. So I had this idea to actually use scenes from other Shakespeare plays, almost kind of like a greatest hits of Shakespeare. I felt this was also in keeping with the fact that The Tempest is one of Shakespeare's final major plays, and in some ways is his kind of goodbye, his farewell to the theater. In some ways, he puts down his staff. This rough magic I here abjure. So in a way, I felt it was keeping, and it was also in keeping with a very important principle of Naked Shakes, which is in that same play, that same speech, Prospero talks about our actors, as I foretold you, are all spirits and are melted into air. And he says, shall dissolve, the great globe itself shall dissolve. And I always thought that was very interesting. He could have used the word earth. He could have used the word world. He used the word globe, which of course was the name of his theater. And there is always a kind of meta-theatrical lens that Shakespeare views all of his plays. Ironically, the Globe Theater really did dissolve. For those of you who don't know, it burned down during a production of Shakespeare's obscure play Henry VIII, when I think they tried to fire a cannon off as a special effect. And as a result, when you go to visit the Globe Theater in England, you are not really visiting the Globe Theater, you're visiting a replica of the Globe Theater. So it's almost like Shakespeare was prescient and knew it would dissolve. Who knows? We are such stuff as dreams are made on. And that really affected me going forward. At the same time, I was very affected. I'm a big fan of episodic entertainment. I loved The Sopranos and Breaking Bad and The Wire and so many shows that have come. And I asked myself often, what is it about a season finale or a series finale when you've gotten to know the characters over time? Why is that something that we get so excited about and we wait for it? It's so special in many of our lives. Or maybe I just watch too much TV. I don't know. But so that's where the real idea for the adaptation of Death of Kings came along. I also am willing to admit this publicly. I can kind of have a short attention span. So that means that I felt like a lot of these wonderful plays, and they are wonderful plays. I thought the 3 Henry VI plays, which are very rarely done, are really interesting, wonderful plays, but not every moment of them. And so I felt there is filler in there. There's stuff that really we can excise from the plays. At least I felt that way. But I wanted to continue that episodic arc so that, for example, in the Death of Kings, rather than having to come back on successive nights to see what happens to Prince Hal and Henry IV and Falstaff, you could see them, the entire arc in one night. Same thing with, I mentioned Margaret before, and Richard III. Most of us know the play Richard III, if you know any Shakespeare history plays at all. But at that point, it's very late in the story. So adaptation allowed for to tell these stories in their complete arcs in the course of an evening. So that started it. And then I moved on to a different adaptation recently on Zoom, Immortal Longings, which was an idea that I had walking around the ruins of the Roman Forum. I hope that doesn't sound pretentious, but to combine Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra together. And then I threw in another play, George Bernard Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra, to make a pastiche. I really love doing that. I also understand, I hope that it doesn't rub people the wrong way. People are very proprietary when it comes to their Shakespeare. They want it a certain way. They expect certain things. So I realize that I'm taking risks from doing it. But I do think the plays have survived over time because of adaptation, because of the ability of each artist, each scholar, each student in successive generations to take their crack at finding the root of it, finding what's really, really the heart of it for them. And so that I believe in very strongly. I hope that's an answer to the question about, it's kind of a long answer about adaptation, but it's just something I feel inside. I think that now I never want to stop doing.
That's a fantastic answer. And along those lines, and thinking about sort of bringing a play to our present moment, I want to turn to the recent fantastic production of Twelfth Night. I saw this production both in the summer again and again when it returns in the fall. And it was so joyous, right? And this is what I heard from others as well, right? How much joy they felt seeing this production. And in part, of course, this was because we have live theater once again, right? So first, I want to ask, what was that like for you and for the actors? How hard was it not to have live theater for 18 months? What was it like to finally return? And why Twelfth Night for that return?
Yes. Well, I knew, and all of us who are teaching in the Department of Theater and Dance, and of course, all of us who are teaching all over the university knew what a toll it had taken on our students being on Zoom for a year and a half. Let's face it, some of us who are older, we can take that more. But, I know that myself, if I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was not made to sit in a room all day for a year and a half and take classes that way. It was a very difficult challenge. And also, you could almost look at it like it was an absurd challenge for theater and dance. In our department, it really affected dance even more because of the whole notion of Zoom was not built to synchronize music and to synchronize movement or to have voices speak together. So we were creating this Zoom theater. We were very excited about it, but we knew that our students were craving in-person return and craving to be physical again. And we didn't know what was going to happen at UCSB. We all went through this together, right? Where sometime in last spring, we didn't know. Vaccines were new. I knew that once the vaccine came out, okay, there was hope. So I was thinking about, didn't know whether the university would be back online again, didn't know, but had to start planning. And I received an email from a student who said, yes, we would like to do Naked Shakes, but only if it's in person. And I realized we had to be in person. We just couldn't do another Zoom production. It was too difficult for morale. And I remembered an idea, first of all, that I had had for doing Twelfth Night outdoors years ago. When I first came to UCSB over 20 years ago, I wanted to start a Shakespeare festival down by the lagoon on the Commencement Green because I felt really fortunate that we in the Department of Theater and Dance had this wonderful piece of real estate overlooking the glorious lagoon. There's a reason they do graduation out there. So I thought I wanted to do Twelfth Night and start it with a boat coming down the lagoon. And I wanted to start a Shakespeare festival way back then. And the whole start of this festival would be the sea captain and Viola coming down the lagoon and the first in the boat. And the first lines of this festival would be, "What country friend is this? This is Illyria, lady." And yes, Illyria is a real place, kind of. But even the name Illyria has a mythical, magical air to it. And I felt like our department is Illyria. Our world is Illyria. Our coming back from COVID is Illyria. And so I thought, 20 years later, this would be the perfect time to try to make that happen. We knew that indoor performance, we didn't think we were ready for that. And we knew it was time to try to do outdoor performance. Also, Twelfth Night is a play about reunion, about coming together. And I felt, what more important theme is there on earth right now than that one? Isn't that what we were all craving? And and many people don't know this. Shakespeare wrote a couple of different plays about twins. Early in his career, he wrote The Comedy of Errors. And The Comedy of Errors is about two sets of twins, and it's a very farcical romp, a silly play, Comedy of Errors. It's very popular, but I don't think anyone would say it's one of Shakespeare's deepest plays. Well, now in the middle of his career, around the time that he's writing Hamlet and other plays like it, he writes Twelfth Night. And what many people don't know is that Shakespeare had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And 2 of those children, a boy and a girl, were twins. And one of the twins' name was a boy named Hamnet, who some of you may know. There's a novel named Hamnet that has come out this year. Very wonderful book. So Hamnet unfortunately died at age 11. Now, we don't have any diaries of Shakespeare, any journals or anything like that. So we don't have anything in his, his reaction to the death of his son. But even if you don't have children, I think we could all imagine what it must be like to lose a son and to lose your boy at 11 years old. And what's interesting about Twelfth Night is Twelfth Night begins with a shipwreck when seemingly boy and girl, Sebastian and Viola, are separated and seeming dead to one another, and then ends with a wonderful reunion after all of this mistaken identity and farce and comedy of coming back together. I always felt that Shakespeare was doing in his play what he couldn't do in real life. And so I felt that was very poignant about Twelfth Night, and this notion that, when I direct a play, there are lots of themes I'm interested in, and I've directed certain plays multiple times, and it's always different for me. This time there was nothing more significant than reunion and coming back together. And at the same time, Twelfth Night is an exploration of gender, of sexuality. It also shouldn't be lost for those of you who love the movie Shakespeare in Love like I do, when you think about the fact that all of Shakespeare's plays were performed by men, or those identifying as men, but by men on the stage. So a character like Viola would be a man disguised as a woman playing Viola, who then in the play disguises herself as a man. I believe Shakespeare was very interested in that cycle, and that disguise is a major theme in Shakespeare's plays. So I felt that all of that, we are living in a moment right now where all of that is extremely important and interesting to explore. So that's the reason for Twelfth Night. I also felt, I'm so glad you used the word joyous. I so appreciate that you felt that way, Jim, because I felt like we needed it, didn't we? All of us out there listening to this right now, I mean, what a year and a half. We needed to feel that. And to me, I didn't know if Twelfth Night would work. I swear doing it took years off our lives, because we were creating a theater where there was never a theater before. And that involved issues of amplification and focus, etc. It was very challenging. The actors in it did an amazing job. But I remember on opening performance, late in the afternoon, and we did these all in natural light. In the late afternoon, the light outside on the lagoon was so beautiful. And I felt that when the play really revealed its truth and its heart in its simplicity and honesty, that everyone in the audience was also having their own private reaction to being back. And for many people, this was probably the first event that they attended. It's my play. I think it was the first event I attended in a year and a half. And so I'm hoping that people sat there privately on their blanket or in their chair, soaking in this language, this music, this beautiful lagoon, this beautiful light and weather, and just felt whatever they were feeling deep in their hearts at that moment. And I really hoped that we would make that connection. And I felt that there was nothing more important than that, and
What a fantastic answer. And, the theme of reunion, I really do think spoke to how everyone was feeling, seeing the production and being back in person, seeing live theater once again. I loved the use of the lagoon, the use of the green space. One of the things, one might notice about this production is it is beautifully and sort of cleverly choreographed in ways, large and small. I'm thinking, in small ways, the handing off of microphones, right, which is beautifully done, but also, the use of this expanse of space, Antonio running away into the distance. So it was beautifully choreographed, but at the same time, there was a spontaneity, a delightful spontaneity about, and around this production, actors interacting with the audience. Could you talk about the production and how it was open to improvisation, even though it was so beautifully choreographed?
I kept encouraging the actors to open the space. Go ahead.
This will be our last question before we turn.
And I'll answer it quickly, I promise. We open up the space. And an interesting thing happened on our very first performance. In the second half, the microphones all died. We lost all power. And the actors responded in the most amazing way. They completely embraced the space. The entire show opened up. And I kept telling them, that's what I've wanted all along. And so, and I would give actors a notion of like a direction of okay, you have to make an entrance from there. Don't make a little tiny entrance. Why don't you start all the way there across the lawn and run in? And I just thought it was so exciting to watch these people running. They probably hate me. I was like a football coach or a track coach or something like that. So maybe when we get to audience questions, maybe more people will ask about this. But the notion of, I'm so glad you picked up on it, because the beauty of people just running through space, it was part of the celebration of being back together.
Hi. That was great. So interesting. And the thought that's going through my mind now is the way you began your comments, Irwin, by discussing how the actors generate this theatricality. And you ended sort of in talking about this moment that Jim asked about, this improvisational moment. And what occurred to me is that as an audience member, what you're watching is also the actors having an experience. That it's not a reproduction, it is a generative experience. And that's what's so exciting about it. Yeah, so thank you. I want to pose a question from an audience member who asks you, Irwin, how have you adapted from working somewhere you were familiar with, like the Hatland Theater, to performing and directing on the Commencement lawn and managing or dealing with the obstacles of COVID-19? And this is from a former Shakespeare student of yours.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that question, whoever you are. And I would say that one of the other principles of Naked Shakes, it's in the name. We don't try to hide things. It's like we try to embrace the limitations. It's almost like I take the attitude of, well, if we want something and it's too expensive, maybe, then it probably wasn't the choice to begin with, or something like that. Or if we feel like we can't do it, then we need to embrace the obstacles, limitations, challenges, and don't pretend that the audience can't see them either. So I would often tell the actors sometimes, I think they would think that when they left the stage, they suddenly became invisible and nobody could see them. I was like, no, we could see you. It's out there. So it was very, very difficult. I feel like we pulled it off, but the challenges were things like, just think sound for a moment. In order to look at the beautiful lagoon, and you can kind of see it behind me, I've chosen to zoom from there. In order to look, to be there, we didn't want to block it with any kind of structure. So there's no shell or anything like you might if you went to the bowl or something like that. There is nothing there for the sound to be directed. It's diffused. It's all over. So therefore, we knew we needed microphones. Microphones are expensive, especially body microphones. So we used handheld microphones. We discovered in the middle of the rehearsal process we needed more microphones. And being chair, I took a big gulp and authorized a little bit of money for more microphones, knowing that this was a pioneering production in our department, and that I was saying, we were all saying, why haven't we done outdoor theater before this? We live in Santa Barbara, for God's sakes. So it was the big answer to that question is everything was new. Mm-hmm. Everything was reinventing or inventing the wheel. Mm-hmm. And it was extremely difficult, but very gratifying.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite piece of music in the Twelfth Night production, and why?
Oh, well, I'm a little biased because I did write some of the music. My favorite piece of music, I wrote this song. We had so many people who wanted to be in this show that I wrote a song called The Doubling Song about literally double casting and putting the issue right there in front of it. And so I wrote my little very clever lyrics, and our wonderful guitarist, a student named Brandon Statner, a physics student, never been in a play before. he wrote this wonderful music. And again, Christina McCarthy, who I've mentioned many times, just has such an important hand in this. So I would say that. But I also loved when, the students, for example, we had 3 actors playing Festi, and they decided one day to sing September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. So I said, let's put that in the show. We used, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. We used in the summertime. These sound like oldies, but we use all kinds of music, everything like that, as well. I don't know if I have a favorite, but it was an eclectic mix, and anything goes, Susan. That's what I would say. Not the song Anything Goes, but anything goes.
Can you sing just the first 2 lines of the song you wrote?
Sure. It goes, way back in the spring of 21, we were all sick of Zoom and not having much fun. And that I can't believe I forgot my own lyrics, but it's something like, we knew we wanted to perform soon, and wouldn't it be great if we could perform by the lagoon? So all kinds of things like that. So yes. So
all right. Well, I have one final audience question to ask you. Namely, have you thought about building a modular stage that can be used on the lawn for Naked Shake's future productions? And if you have, we have someone willing here to make that a reality. The person who asked the question. So
thank you. We have definitely thought about it. And in fact, the stage that we used out there is that to some extent, and we're talking about expanding it, particularly again for dance, because there might be wonderful opportunities for dance performances to go out there on the modular stage as well. And so absolutely we want to do that. But I also want to make an interesting point. I am ambivalent about Naked Shakes being outside, because even though I loved this experience and I loved that we did, in some ways, the sort of purer vision of Naked Shakes is inside a theater. It is an awareness of the environs of the theater. And it is not a space where the beauty of the environment is competing with the specificity of the imagery. I've directed A Midsummer Night's Dream 3 times at UCSB. The first time we did a beautiful production of it in the Hatland Theater, but it wasn't the production I wanted. I wanted to scale it down. I directed it again as the very first Naked Shakes show, and we scaled it down and did it in our studio theater. And then I did it again, scaled even more down in one of our rehearsal studios, because again, getting at this notion, what my dear colleague Daniel Stein calls perpendicularity, whereas you are laying an image, on top of something not parallel or not competing, but perpendicular to what the visual is. And so we definitely want to do Naked Shakes more outdoors, and who knows, we may be doing that. But I would love to get in touch with who is ever asking this question. Please contact me and we will.
I'm writing down his name. All right. Well, thank you both so much. This was just delightful and compelling. And the question we won't be able to ask you that I wanted to ask you had to do with how both of you who team teach, how your own experience of the theater informs your pedagogy. But we won't have time to discuss that. So I think that students here in the Zoom will have to enroll in your class the next time you offer it so they can experience that.
And all I'll say is Jim's teaching has been a huge influence on me and our productions.
And Irwin's productions have been a huge influence on me. So yeah, please do come to our classes.
Yeah, come to their classes. And thank you all. Come to our Humanities Decanted, both with your glasses generated by the actors and with real glasses, we hope, in person soon. So thank you for coming. Please, when you leave, fill out the exit survey, and we will see you all back here very soon. Good night.
Thank you.